So reflecting back on my life, I've realized that there's a phase where I keep having this experience where I feel lost, I feel confused, and I feel like a leaf in the wind. And every single time I hate it. But since then, I've learned that life is cyclical. And the trick is that if you can know what cycle and what phase you're in, instead of having fear and panic and anxiety and being confused about the future, you can feel at peace and confident. So in this video, I want to share what that 4-part cycle is so that you can have that kind of peace. What's up guys, Alex Hine, author of the book Master the Day. Now if you don't know, I also have another book called Milk the Pigeon, which is about how to figure out what to do with your life. You can check it out on Amazon. Now if a book's not your thing, the first link below is for a free journaling worksheet and an email every few days you're going to get on how to use journaling to reinvent and figure out what to do with your life. So you can check it out, the first link below. So Martha Beck is one of my absolute favorite authors. And in her book, Finding Your Own North Star, she talks about this 4 phases of life of the HERO'S SAGA. Now I'm really going to focus on the first phase, which is really the phase where you call it death and rebirth. You're in this detonated nuclear zone where you have all this potential, but all this open area of your life is really anxiety inducing. So the 4 phases are: number 1, death and rebirth; number 2, dreaming and scheming; number 3, the HERO'S SAGA; and number 4, the promised land. Now in the first square, death and rebirth, this is usually after a catalytic event, after a transition, or some internal kind of upheaval. So it could be death, it could be divorce or heartbreak, it could be graduating school or moving cities. Any one of those things that creates a blank slate type feeling, which is both the feeling of potential and the feeling of intense anxiety because you don't know what's going to come in the future. Now, the feeling you generally have here is, I don't have a goddamn clue what is going on, and I feel like I'm a leaf in the wind. Now, the funny thing about death and rebirth is that if you know you're in the death and rebirth square of your life, and you're going to be in many of them throughout your life, it gives you a feeling of peace and certainty, where you normally feel uncertainty and anxiety for some people. Now, the irony is that when this kind of death and rebirth, this kind of catalytic event comes internally, like you just intuitively feel like you need to pursue this passion, or you need to move across the country or across the world or take a trip or a year off, those are even more likely to cause intense anxiety and uncertainty, because when everybody else outside of you wants to know what you're doing, you can only say, I just have a feeling I should do this. But if it comes externally, like you got a promotion and they want to move you from New York to LA, then you can give them a concrete reason. Now here's what Martha Beck calls this first square. She calls it the threshold. Welcome to the middle of nowhere. And since you've lost your old identity but haven't really embraced a new one, you're temporarily a kind of nobody. You'll have no one to cling to as relationships change, and nobody nowhere with no one and nothing. Doesn't that sound fun? So square 1 is all about you've entered some kind of life change, whether you chose it or it happened to you. You feel lost, you feel confused, you feel a lot of potential because you can do anything, and you feel a fear of not having a clear path forward. But if you know that, you're safe in the woods at night. Phase 2 is called dreaming and scheming. And I'm going to go into this a little bit less because in phase 2, you've exited the uncertainty of phase 1, death and rebirth. And now you're like, okay, I've just moved cities, or one of my parents died, or I just had the worst heartbreak of my life and now I have to rebuild my whole life. Now what? Phase 2 is the now what? Dreaming and scheming. You're starting to plot your path going forward. You're visualizing, you're writing and journaling and trying to figure out what you want to build in your life and what moves you're going to make to move your life forward. So you move from this potential of the void, which is fear and potential, the good and the bad, and then you've moved into, okay, I know where I was, now I've got to do something about it. Let's plan. Phase 3, the HERO'S SAGA, is really all about the grind, right? You've moved cities, you're in a new company, time to make friends, start dating again, get in the gym, find out where your local weekend spots are going to be, get your social life together. It's about starting that company, the business, the passion project. And now every day, 7 days a week, you're figuring out, how am I going to bring this baby to life? It's about a new relationship or the transition out of the old relationship and rebuilding your life, or maybe building a new life with a new person. So in this third phase, I really just think of it as the grind. Whether you like the grind or you hate the grind, it's the dirty work, hands in the dirt, getting things done. Finally, phase 4 is the promised land. You've reached some level of success in that domain of your life. You're stable, you're secure, career's good, relationship's good, friendship's good, whatever it is, and you can relish and sit back and enjoy what you've done. But don't worry or don't get too comfortable, because phase 1, death and rebirth, is always coming. It can come from the birth of a child or the death of someone you love. It can come from stability in a place to finally moving to a different city again. The life cycle of humans is always dancing between these 4 things. Maximum stability, maximum instability. And in between, what happens is what can be alarming if you don't recognize what square you are in. And that's why I'm so grateful for Martha's work. But what do you do if you are in square one and it's given you a lot of anxiety and fear? Here are the recommendations she has, which I absolutely love. Now, the first thing is, instead of clinging back to square floor, which is the promised land, read what your gut and your hunches and your intuition is saying. So an example is, you've just gone through a horrible breakup. You have to rebuild your whole life. Maybe they were a big piece of your social life, your work life, your daily life, everything. The tendency when we go into the void is to want to go back and cling towards that person. Just like, give me another shot. Can we try to work it out? You want to text them, you want to microdose on them. That is the tendency, because all humans crave stability. But instead of doing that, sit down and feel, what do I want now? Do I really want that relationship? Maybe you do, but you probably don't. So what do I really want? She calls it reading your internal compass, which is really paying attention to your body on, does this next thing excite me, or does it feel heavy and does it drain me? The second thing is to only make small moves and kind of feel things out. This square is not the square to make big commitments, big moves, start that huge business. It's the time to just dip your toes in all these little waters for a little while, live on the 15-minute plan, as she calls it, not the 5-year plan. Literally live on the 15-minute plan and just see and feel which one of these things is really speaking to me the most, which one of these things is really exciting and makes me feel good. The fourth thing is not to mistake a square one identity crisis for making the wrong decision. You know, in this square, you are most likely to go back to the wrong thing to feel safe. The horrible boss, the horrible job, the horrible partner that didn't treat you well. That is the human tendency, because you want to go back to what's safe and what's stable. Don't do that. And the last things are to repeat the square one mantra, which is, I don't know what the hell is going on, but that's okay. And then enjoy the infinite potential of your life at ground zero, to rebuild it any way you want it, and to try to stay in that state as much as you can, because the infinite potential is always the upside, but it can dip into feeling like it's a massive black hole and a void, and fear can set in. But if you remember, you're in a state of both, which is just objectively potential. Then you can feel much safer and much more excited about the future rather than what you've just think you've lost. So I hope that helps you guys. That made a humongous difference in my life, especially in my 20s. But if you follow those 4 phases, you know exactly where you are. It can lead to a feeling of security and confidence. All right, guys, so I hope that helps. Make sure you click the link below. Those journaling exercises that you're going to get via email every few days will help you plot out what to do next in your life and how to figure out that big vision and how to get your life all together. So check it out, the first link below, and then check out my related videos right over here.